Hello and welcome to the School of English Virtual Open Day. Over the next hour or so, we'll be talking to lecturers and students to get a flavour of the course and get a taste of life on campus, which we got a little glimpse of in that opening clip. And whether you've got questions about job prospects, admissions, or where best to soak up student life, you can send them in via our live comments panel on YouTube, and we'll get them answered for you by our various panels this afternoon. Now, as we're all obviously social distancing and remoting in from our various homes, do bear with us if we encounter any technical glitches, which we'll look to sort out as soon as possible. Right, so let's begin our first panel this afternoon. I'm delighted to say I'm joined by Dr. Sarah James, the head of school, Dr. Juha Virtanen, the head of admissions, and also Professor Jennie Batchelor. Thank you all very much for joining. Dr. James, let's come to you first. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the School of English?
Yes, indeed. What I would like to do first of all is thank you so much to everybody for joining us today. I know this is a rather unusual way of interacting with the school, but we really hope that you are going to enjoy what we have up for you. I'm going to spend a few minutes just talking through some of the broader outlines of the School of English before passing on to my colleague Juha Virtanen, who will talk in more detail about the degree itself. So could I have my first slide? Okay, so this slide has got some facts and figures on it. They're fairly dull. I'm sure you've seen lots of these kinds of things before, and it's very easy for these things to simply wash over you. But I did want to pause on it just for a moment to give you a sense that the School of English at Kent has a really good, strong national reputation. You will see that it has scored very highly in the Complete University Guide, and it's also very highly ranked in the Guardian University Guide. And that is something that I think should reassure you. This is a high quality institution and a really good English department. You'll see also that we have scored really well for research intensity in a relatively recent exercise called the Research Excellence Framework. Why does that matter to you? Well, what it means is that the teachers in the School of English are all acknowledged experts in their fields, and that means that you have the opportunity to be taught by people who are working at the cutting edge of their discipline throughout your time as an undergraduate. We are a large department, so there's plenty of expertise across a broad range of subject areas, and I know that Juha will talk about that a little later on. But being at university is not just about studying a subject you love. Of course, that's a lot of it, but it's also about what you can do afterwards. And I hope you'll be reassured to see that at the University of Kent, at the School of English, our undergraduates do really well in terms of getting themselves into good graduate level jobs at the end of their degree. Can I have the next slide, please? So, if, as I very much hope, you come to join us next September, you will become part of the School of English's academic community. So what does that mean? It means we are a group of students and scholars who come together with a sense of common purpose. We all love literature, we all care about it, and we all believe it is a subject that can help us to think much more broadly about the big questions that are important to us in the world. You'll see on the slide here some links to our Twitter feed, to Instagram and Facebook, and I really hope that you will go and connect up with those things and start to get a sense of what the academic community at Kent is like. Next slide, please. But community isn't just within the institution. And one of the things that I think is really distinctive about doing English at Kent is the way in which we as a department look outwards. So this isn't just about self-indulgently studying books for their own sake. It's also about recognizing that literature can help us to be more socially responsible and to engage with the world around us. And you'll see on the slide here some links to various projects that connect us out very specifically with communities, with refugee communities, with hospices, and with other social and community activities that you as a student can get involved with to really make a difference, while you are doing your degree, and indeed beyond. Next slide, please. So finally, for my little segment, the reason I think you should come to study literature at the University of Kent is precisely because we believe that literature and writing is about community. An academic community, yes, but also about the wider community, the world around us, engaging with that and finding ways to think about how we can make the world a better place. Next slide. And I will now hand over to my colleague, Dr. Juha Virtanen.
Marvellous,
thank you very much,
Sarah.
Dr. James. Over to you, Dr. Virtanen.
Yeah, great. Could we have the slide back up again, please? So I will really just start and pick up directly where Sarah left off, as that ethos about thinking around literature and its relationship to the world and thinking about community and social responsibility is directly reflected across our curriculum. And it's difficult to kind of give a clear and full understanding of all the kind of exciting modules you could do as a part of your degree here at Kent. But I'll just quickly walk you through some of the examples year by year. So in stage 1, in addition to foundational skills that cover a large range of literary subjects and themes, you would also have the opportunity to take modules such as Other Worlds, where we would look at dystopian and science fiction and think about how these fantastical narratives might speak towards real-world social, political, environmental, and other kinds of issues that we face in our world today. Or you might be looking at text circling around contemporary feminism and think about the intersectionalities in contemporary feminism through modules like Black Girl Magic. In stage 2, where we focus on key historical periods and themes, you would have the opportunity to take modules including the contemporary, where we reflect on the relationship between 21st century literature and current global issues that we face in our world today. You might also have the opportunity to challenge certain perceived ideas and notions of things like Britain's imperial past, whether this be through, say, 18th century literature or through post-colonial literature. And then in stage 3, we will move into specialized areas of study with absolute kind of latest cutting edge ideas and areas of study. And as a part of that, you might have the opportunity to take a module such as Reaching Out, where you will actually go into the local community and work with charities like Pilgrim's Hospice, thereby kind of actually using that societal engagement that Sarah spoke about as a part of your studies. You'd also have the opportunity to take exciting modules around literary genres and forms like spoken word poetry through Poetry Beyond Text, or study the kind of most recent developments in crime fiction and its historical development as it's happened in the United States of America. So those are just some of the examples of the exciting range of things you could do in terms of our degree structure. Could we have the next slide, please? And but in addition to being about the world, our degrees are also crucially about you as the student. And what that means is that nearly all of our modules across the degree are optional. And that means you have the freedom to shape your studies as a personal journey that is guided by your interests, by your passions, and by your enthusiasms. But on top of that, we also offer a range of different degree options and thus further emphasize the flexibility that's available to you as a student here. We offer our flagship degrees in English literature and English literature and creative writing, but you might also take joint honors, say with English literature and film, and you also have the option to add a year abroad or a year in industry with a placement year as a part of your studies. So there's a huge range of different degree options that you can tailor to suit your specific interests and needs. Can we have the next slide, please? And because our degrees are about you, that also means that we very warmly welcome applications from a number of different educational backgrounds. For A-levels, our entry requirements are BBB, but if you're doing, say, the International Baccalaureate, it would be 34 points as an entry requirement for that. But we also then take applications from students with access courses or students with BTech degrees on a case-by-case basis. And within all of these entry requirements, we have flexibility within reason. And so if you like what you hear during this broadcast today, my final advice would be, please just apply. Next slide, please. And finally, for my bit, because our degrees are about you, it also means that your personal journey that you undertake with us throughout your degree will feature a diverse and exciting range of dynamic assessments. As a student here, you wouldn't just do research essays, although of course those are a core part of any English degree, but in addition to these kinds of assignments, you would also engage in practices like writing a reflective journal and thereby charting your development throughout your studies in a particular module. You might also build an academic blog or work on group projects and presentations. You might even, in some of the modules, make your own documentary film as a part of your assignments. So in addition to the kind of module learning outcomes, the assignments that we offer prepare you with a diverse range of practical skills that are suitable for a range of very different professions after graduation. And finally, your degree will culminate in a personal project that you will devise and execute yourself during the case of your final year. And that personal project can really take a number of different forms. You might, for example, choose to do a podcast about post-colonial literature. Or if you're creatively minded, you write your own novel, your own collection of short stories, or a collection of during the course of your final year. You might also, if you're more events planning minded, stage and curate your own exhibition around a particular literary theme. Or you might start up your own YouTube channel and do a YouTube channel about literature and popular culture, or indeed any topic that you want to kind of talk about. In preparing for your project, you'd be helped by your own personal academic advisor, as well as the project supervisor throughout that process. And you would then finish your degree with an actual object, whatever form that object might take, that you would be able to take with you afterwards, and indeed perhaps even show to prospective employers. And the reason why I've mentioned that term employers a couple of times here is because employability is really at the heart of the assessments that we offer. You not only engage in in-depth study of literature and thinking about literature's relationship to the world with your degree at English at Kent, but you would also become adept at a series of non-routine tasks that require social intelligence, complex critical thinking, and different forms of creative problem solving. And all of these key practical skills you would develop throughout your degree are highly attractive to a range of employers after graduation. So that would be it from me. Thanks very much for listening.
Elements of the course there. Thank you very much, Dr. Virtanen. Now over to Professor Batchelor. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, Professor Batchelor, and the academic community at Kent?
Absolutely, thanks Cameron. So I'm a professor of 18th century studies at the University of Kent, where I've been for the past 16 years, having previously taught at a couple of other institutions. So I teach a range of modules, undergraduate and postgraduate, in a very long 18th century, which for me kind of starts in the 17th century and ends somewhere in the 19th century. The end date is pretty flexible. What I want to do in this little bit of time that I've got right here is to join up some of the conversations that we've already been listening to, the things that Sarah's been talking about, the things that Juha's been talking about in relation to academic community and employability in particular. Academic community, I really want to emphasise, because, as I say, I've been at Kent for a very long time, and I'm proud of a number of things about our department, but I think the thing I'm most proud about really is the sense of academic community that we have within the School of English. And as Sarah said, that's an academic community that's forged in part through, obviously, the work that we do in seminars, in lectures, through the modules that Juha has been talking about. But it's through those broader initiatives that Sarah was talking about, the kind of community engagement activities, which are really a very distinctive part of our degree programme, and that I think we're all very proud of in the School of English. But I just want to talk about one other example of a way that we forge academic community, one of many, I might say, so there's plenty more we can talk about in discussion afterwards, should you be interested. One thing I've been very actively involved in for a couple of years now is a summer internship programme. So this is an entirely voluntary set of activities for decide not to sign up for in the summertime of your second or third year of study in particular. And the one that I'm working on is very closely related to my research. So as I say, I work in the 18th century. I particularly have interest in the history of women's writing and material culture. So when I'm a professor of 18th century studies, it's because whilst my primary emphasis is on the literary, like most of my colleagues, I see the literature as very much embedded in a whole range of cultural practices around material culture, around the arts, and about philosophy and the history of ideas and all sorts of things. Anyway, my own interest, as I say, is very much recently been focused around a publication that I think is incredibly interesting. It's probably, I suppose we can safely call it the first modern woman's magazine, called the Ladies' Magazine, which ran from 1770 to 1832. In fact, I even have, because this is the kind of world I inhabit, I have a copy of the one for 1796 right in front of me here. And this copy is very dear to me because when I happened to buy it a few years ago in the midst of the research that I was doing on the magazine, I found in it some material that I had been looking for about 15 years at the time, which is the embroidery patterns that the magazine published amongst an eclectic range of other text-based media like fiction and essays and so forth. And why I was so excited to find these embroidery patterns is because these were printed in the magazine for 50 years, thousands of them every month. And after 15 years of looking, I've virtually seen none of them because of like knitting patterns, sewing patterns. These are things that are meant to be used. They're printed to be used. And the ones I've been looking for ever had been because they hadn't survived. And then one day I happened to buy this copy of this book and I acquired a tranche of them. I subsequently discovered some more and I subsequently discovered more after that. It's a hugely exciting discovery for me. I was very interested in finding out what the world would make if I were to make them more public. And so the summer in life I've been running has been one where I've been working with students, volunteers who've come to together with me and think about how do we make this archive, this new archive of old material available to new audiences? What do they need to know about it? How can they navigate it? How could they use it? What's most useful to them? And this project that I've been running has been absolutely phenomenally exciting for me, because it's truly been in that spirit of academic community, a collective enterprise, which is to say that students from all backgrounds, some have come to it because they're interested in the history of dress fashion, some make their own clothes, some are stitchers and makers themselves. Some aren't very interested in that at all, but they're interested in women's history. Others are really interested and very accomplished in the technical aspects of thinking about how to make archives digitally available, and they have forms of knowledge that, frankly, I struggle with. And so when I talk about it as a collective enterprise, I really mean it. What we did was we came together, working with people's schedules. Everyone has complex lives and plates that they're spending at any time. So we worked out times where we could come together, bring all of our collective expertise from our study, from our lives outside of our study, and thought about how we could make a database of this material that would be really useful to the wider public. That database is now almost ready to go live. I'm extremely excited about it and extremely proud of the work that we have achieved as a collective. It's a wonderful project. It's one that has helped, as I say, to hone individuals' employability skills. We know we have a very good track record in the School of English in getting our students out into the workplace. We have ambitious students, a wide range of talents, which they hone very carefully over their 3 or 4 years of study with us. And activities like the one that I've been describing are just one of a number of optional, additional ways in which we help cultivate those interests, those skill sets among our students in ways that we can also learn from each other. Frankly, I feel as a teacher in the School of English, I consistently learn more from my students than I ever thought would have been possible when I embarked upon a career in teaching in a higher education institute. But it's a really wonderful kind of activity, and one of just many. I also at the moment am having a very happy experience of being a student on another summer internship program that's running in the school right now around learning how to code, around doing computer programming, and this has been hugely beneficial to me, which I've a great deal from my fellow students on that module too. So yes, academic community is the centre and the heart of everything we do at Kent. We enable that community through many different ways, and I hope that you'll enjoy exploring some of those opportunities with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Batchelor. A really vibrant community, a really vibrant picture of the community that you paint there. All of you watching at home, do send in your questions on YouTube on the live comments panel. We'll get them answered by our panel here, and any more particular student-based questions, we will be having some students that we'll be talking to a little later on. Dr. James, let's come to you first. You opened telling us about the course and its standing in the rest of the UK, and there's some really good figures there that you spoke about. Quite a hard one to sum up, but what makes the School of English so distinctive?
I think there are a number of things. The first, I would go back to that emphasis that we have on looking outwards. You know, we all, as academics in the school, believe passionately in the importance of text and reading. Books are the beginning of everything we do, and they are the center of what we do. But we don't believe that our subject ends with books. Crucially, we believe that books are a gateway to enabling us to think about other things. So as Jennie was explaining, you know, she's looking at a ladies' magazine, and it's opened up a world of female activity in the 18th century, of the things that women did, as well as reading their magazine. And so that outward focus, I think, is really, really critical to what we do here. So books are central, but they are the starting point for developing a wider viewpoint on the world. And for me, I think that is probably the most important distinctive feature of what we do.
And Dr. Virtanen, I think that worldview was really highlighted by the breadth of the course that you spoke about in your section earlier on. Could you just go into maybe a bit more depth about some of those modules that students can get excited about?
Yeah, so certainly, I'm very happy to do so. So in the first year, for example, there are two core modules that allow students to make a smooth transition from studying at school to studying at university level. So we have a module called Changing Literatures, which allows students to think about the way in which different literary forms have changed over the course of time. We go all the way from Chaucer to the contemporary. We think about contemporary writers like, say, Kate Tempest and so on. And it also then kind of trains students to think about their kind of essay writing skills and prepares them really with the kind of core foundational academic skills that they'll need for the duration of their degree. But they also will be taking a module called Thinking Through Theory, where they will learn how our understanding of a literary text might change very radically if we apply a different kind of philosophical outlook to it. How might this particular text, for example, be different if we read it from a psychoanalytical perspective, or let's say from a Marxist perspective? So it kind of really emphasizes how philosophical engagement and thinking about literature in relation to those larger ideas can really shape what we can get out of the text itself. And in addition to those kind of modules, then we also kind of offer a number of different ranges of optional modules that students can do. I mentioned both Other Worlds and Black Girl Magic earlier, but we can also offer a module on romantic ecologies, which really thinks about how the writing of the Romantic period, whether this be Shelley or any other of the Romantic writers, how these writings can actually give us a sense and speak towards our contemporary concerns around climate and climate change. So there's really, I mean, I could talk forever, really, because we offer such a vast range of modules that really cater to a number of different interests. But I think I'll just kind of close by saying that whatever your interest in literature is, we will certainly have a module where you can explore it and learn more about it in an in-depth and inspiring way.
I think that's a really enticing advert for students to know that they can look at their interests and they can develop those on the course. But kind of off the back of that, Dr. Virtanen, how is the course divvied up in between coursework, practical work, and exams? How is it sort of weighted between those three?
So yeah, in terms of those kind of three and practical work, we have some exams, although we are actively in the process of moving towards reducing the number of exams in favor of more of these dynamic assessments that I spoke about during the course of my presentation earlier. So it will be mostly focused on those kind of coursework examples. Those coursework can take a number of different forms, as I was saying earlier. There may either be coursework that is more kind of research essay based, but you might also do assignments like, say, an annotated bibliography, or like I said before, kind of working on project-based works, working on academic blogs or documentary films and so on. But predominantly throughout your degree, you will find that the emphasis is increasingly placed upon coursework, and that coursework can take a number of different kinds of forms.
Well, it's good if I was a student. I was not a fan of exams. It's good to hear that there's a good weight of coursework there. Obviously, other students as well will be very excited about that. Dr. Batchelor as well, you're talking about internships. What do you think students going on those, what do you think that does to enhance their student experience?
I mean, there's so many different benefits, and some of them are very particular to the individuals, of course, who sign up for them. I mean, rather in the way that students select their modules, they have a variety of reasons for undertaking these internships. So some people do it really to test the waters, you know, like, can I do this? This is something I don't know very much about. This is something I'm curious about. I'd like to know more about it. And so what those students, I would say, tend to get out of these kind of internships is the kind of confidence that comes from trying something new, going outside your comfort zone in some places, and just seeing what skills you can acquire and how you can deal with new and unfamiliar things. And so the kind of the way that can instill confidence in students, I think some have found incredibly valuable. Some students, I think, go into it with quite a knowledge base to start with, and that's, you know, as I say, one of the ways in which I've personally benefited so much from working with students in this way, because I've learned so much from their own expertise. But I think even for those students who are coming into it with a fairly, you know, well-established prior set of assumptions or knowledge and skill sets, what they get again is a really good sense of a sense of what might be possible. Their ideas and their assumptions will get challenged, rather in the same way that they do in a seminar group or a creative writing workshop as part of their formal degree. You know, they get exposed to new approaches, new ways of thinking, new kind of languages sometimes and skills, and so they can start to rethink the way they do things, test their own assumptions, which I think is really valuable. But I think really the greatest thing that comes out of these kind of internships, as I was saying, is this sort of this sense of collective endeavour. You know, I think, if I can just sort of say a different version of what Sarah and Juha have been saying, I think, throughout their responses to your questions, I think one of the things that's fantastic about the degree programme that we offer at Kent is that it's a degree programme that reflects the fact that what constitutes English literature, or what constitutes creative writing, are things which are constantly evolving, right? They look very different now than when I was an undergraduate student, and the model of doing English literature was sitting in a library with a book, reading it quietly, and then writing something and hoping that your teacher liked it. That's not where we are right now. We live in a very different world. The way we encounter, experience, the ways we can talk about and write about or reflect on what we read are very, very different now. And our degree programme is very agile. It evolves with that. And I think also helps to set the agenda really for what English studies looks like now. And I think that kind of moving with the field, helping to define what it is also something that we get out of these summer internship projects. I think people come into it with a set of ideas, they start to rethink what they're doing, and they start to see the real world applications of the kind of work that they're doing. So, you know, the people who come in and have worked with me on doing the database on the ladies magazine probably aren't going to go into the world and create a replica database of that, but the kind of skills that they've learned, the kind of methods of thinking, of project management that they have to develop to work on a project like that are so transferable. They can take them to so many other initiatives. They start to seedbed other projects for them. And you know, some of the students who I worked with last year have taken some of their insights into the jobs that they've taken up in really diverse fields, either further study or in marketing or working in libraries or working in many different spheres, and journalism as well. So I think there's a whole range of benefits. Some of them are very personal and they're very important about developing confidence, and some of them are very practical in terms of developing skill sets. But it's this coming together to think about what we do and to find ways forward that I think is really, really valuable. And that kind of learning from each other is really essential to all aspects of the degree programme that we offer at Kent, I think.
It's a really dynamic community by the sounds of it, something that students can really look forward to. Dr. James Virtanen, we'll be catching up with you a little later on, but time to now say goodbye to Professor Batchelor. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. In a minute, we'll be talking to some current students, as well as Dr. Virtanen. Do send in your questions on YouTube. If you've got any questions, again, on admissions or on student life, do send them in. We've got a couple of short clips now, and we'll be joined by a new panel shortly.
My name's Amy Sackville. I'm Director of Creative Writing here at the University of Kent. At Kent, we really value writing that's relevant to and curious about the world. We want our students to really think about how their writing, their storytelling, their language can respond to and shape the world around them, as well as being a means of authentic self-expression. So we want you to be ambitious, we want you to be original and bold and inventive and brave, and those are things that we strive for in our own artistic practice. All of the teachers at Kent are practicing published writers of poetry, fiction or non-fiction. We're involved in all kinds of other professional activities as well, like publishing small presses, magazines and journals, journalism, book reviews, running events and festivals in Canterbury and London and elsewhere. So all of these elements of our professional practice, our professional experience, our artistic expertise are brought to bear in our teaching of you, and we want you to get involved as well. There's all sorts of extracurricular stuff that you can get involved in, including our weekly reading series where we invite guest speakers. Could be anybody from a debut writer through to a really established big name novelist or poet. There's also a series of talks from professionals working in the books and media industries. So you'll have lots of opportunities to refine your own writing and also to learn about publishing your own work and the publishing industry, as well as getting involved with the really vibrant literary culture and community of the university and of Canterbury. And I hope we can welcome you to join us.
I'm Professor Vibar Cregan-Reid, and I'm going to be talking to you about a first-year module called Romantic Ecologies and the Modern Invention of Nature. It's a module broadly about Romanticism, which is roughly the period from 1789 to 1832, but it's really about how the poetry and the literature of that period impacts on our contemporary thinking today. So how can nature be invented? Well, before the Romantic era, writers such as Daniel Defoe, the author of Robinson Crusoe, talked of the horror and the ugliness and quote, the unhospitable terror of places like this in the Lake District. 100 years later, and the reputation of the region had been completely transformed into a place of beauty and of contemplation. So in Romantic Ecologies, we'll look at what happened to the natural world in the century between Defoe and the Romantic poets, especially figures like Wordsworth and Shelley and Charlotte Smith, and how the debates produced during this period are ones that we're still struggling to make sense of and to understand the impact of today. In many ways, the legacy of Romanticism might be seen in our understanding of things like global warming and climate change, informed as it is by romantic concerns that urge us not to put the natural world into a frame on a wall or to see it as something distant and far away that we might visit on holiday. Instead, they tried to make sense of what we were risking the loss of in the crazed rush to mechanisation and technology and urban living and leisure. Throughout the module, the poetry, the fiction and the essays that we'll encounter will explore the ways that the Romantics saw this newly emergent natural world as restorative and political, even revolutionary. The place where our bodies really and truly belong, an analogue of the mind, a reminder of who we are as a species and the threat of extinction that results in our forgetting it, and how they were cynical about it being put to use for our benefit and suspicious of how it could be profited from. This module will show that the concerns of the Romantics are not a matter of literary history. They're not something that just happened 200 years ago in the past. These are concerns that are still with us, as are their concerns about the environment. I look forward to seeing you next year.
Bit of insight there into the course. Dr. Virtanen has stuck around, and we're also joined by a couple of students to tell us a little bit about their experience at Kent. Rory, we're going to come to you first. Do you want to tell us a little bit about why you chose Kent and what your experience has been like?
Sure. So I'm Rory. I just finished my second year studying English literature at Kent, and I'm going into my third year. And I think something that struck me about Kent from the very beginning, looking around on an open day, was just the breadth of knowledge available in the English department. And as Juha said earlier, and Jennie said, just how everything is ongoing research. You're not getting professors who've been teaching the same tired course for 30 years. You're getting academics who are at the cutting edge of their field in the research. So this year I took a course on late medieval literature, and I was safe in the knowledge that my lecturers and that my seminar leader is continually researching the topic, and there were talks available. Whatever field you choose to go into, there are talks available from guest speakers and speakers on campus who really know their area in the field. The second thing that really struck me about Kent is the campus is such a, it's a huge campus, but it also feels like quite a close-knit community. There are tons of community events every week, and especially in the first couple of weeks of term, you'll find that it's a really welcoming atmosphere. The availability of societies is massive, and although Canterbury is a city, it's quite a small city, so it never feels overwhelming. It feels like you can meet new people and explore it at your own leisure or with friends very easily.
Thank you very much, Rory. Lauren, let's come to you now. Do you want to tell us a little bit about why you picked Kent and what you've enjoyed most about your experience? Okay, I have to apologise. We are having a few technical issues. As I said, we're all remoting in from our various locations, so we will look to get that sorted out. Rory, back to you. You're telling us a little bit about your time at Kent and a little bit about being part of that student and academic community. I think there'll be quite a lot of students maybe before this event who will think, academics, they'll close themselves off in their room, they'll be writing their books and thesis, there won't be as much interaction with students. Would you say that's fair, or would you say there's been a lot of interaction and you've been able to engage with your tutors and with lecturers?
That's definitely a stereotype that you'll run into, but I think you'll find exactly the opposite. A couple of my close friends at university work in other fields, so away from humanities, and I found that actually the people who are out there engaging the most are the humanities students. I think you get as much as you give in a course like English. So while you could lock yourself away in your room with books, you really get the most out of your course if you speak to your seminar leaders, if you speak to your lecturers, even if it's just going up to a lecturer after a lecture and saying, I really enjoyed that topic. Do you have any recommendations for books or areas I can go to learn more about that subject? They'll be more than happy to give you those resources. I think especially as you progress in your course, you'll find that people really start to realize which areas of literature they really love and are very, very happy and excited to talk about those areas. So there's definitely a great community of discourse surrounding any given topic on the course. As far as socializing with other students go, there is a literature society, but also other societies on campus are very well suited to humanities students. I myself have just become the editor of the university newspaper. So if you're looking for a sort of journalism angle, that's an area you can go to. That's the Inquire. But definitely throughout the year there are guest talks that you can turn up to and meet like-minded people. There are seminar events. There are key speakers. There's a huge amount of great English events going on at any given time.
Yeah, lots to be excited about. Can you describe, as you've said there, you're very active and you're involved in those societies. Can you describe what a typical week in the first year is like on the English course?
So depending on, I think for first years, you'll have several lectures a week and seminars, and then depending on the module, workshops for those seminars. But so literature is, especially with the new module, well, the module Changing Literatures, it's a great start to university life because and to the course, because you will be dealing, as Juha has said, with literature from Chaucer to the modern day. So your first term at university, you'll find that you're interacting with, analysing, discussing texts that you might never have otherwise read, and you might not have known that you were interested in. So my first term at university, all I knew in terms of the books that I like were, I love sci-fi and fantasy, and I came from a sort of tradition of Douglas Adams and Neil Gaiman. But very quickly, I found myself really becoming very, very involved with the medieval side of things, with Chaucer, with late medieval English literature and also early modern literature. And that was because I found that out through Changing Literatures, an area of study that I could pursue in second and third year. So it's really just about engaging with the text that you're given and being really open to trying everything out, because you're really going to engage with a whole with poetry, prose, short stories, learn the difference between a tale and a short story, look at adaptation. There's a wide range of things going on at any given time, and your seminars will really strengthen that, because you'll get to debate and discuss these texts and unpick them with your peers and with seminar leaders who really are experts on the topics.
You talked about the societies, and we'll come to that in a sec. Dr. Virtanen, I wanted to ask you as well. We heard about Professor Batchelor earlier on was talking about the internships that are on offer. What about students that might be looking to go a bit further afield? Are there opportunities to have a term or a year abroad, or maybe a term or a year in industry?
Yeah, no, certainly. All of our degrees come with an option of doing a term abroad or a year abroad, or indeed a placement year in industry. So if you choose to do a year or a term abroad, you will go and do that between we'll do that between your second and your third year. So you will do the second year of your studies in Kent, and then you will go to your host institution for a year abroad, and then come back for your final year after that. And really, that can take you anywhere in the world. We have partnership institutions in North America, we have them in Asia, we have them across various different places in Europe. There is a good kind of long-term preparatory sort of set of briefings and workshops and so forth that will prepare you for your year abroad before you go away. And then as a student during a year abroad, you are a student at your host institution. You experience different kind of ways of learning, because obviously university education differs a little bit geographically speaking. So you will learn different kind of educational practices. You will sample different kinds of modules. You will also learn about the benefits of living in a different culture and experiencing a different culture sort of firsthand for a longer period of time. Now, as you can probably tell by my slightly bizarre name and accent, I am not born in the UK myself. I was born in Finland and brought up in the Netherlands, and then came to UK myself as a student. And I can say from experience that kind of benefit, that learning to kind of how to live in a different culture, can be hugely beneficial for you all the way throughout your life, because you become very adaptable. You learn about different kinds of skills, and you become more and more kind of adept in say international kind of travel and all of that, which obviously, well, at least pre-pandemic, was a key part of the kind of globalized workforce that modern employment often kind of involves. So it's a really good skill for that. And then if you choose to go for a placement year instead, you will kind of gain vital work experience that will be a huge addition to your CV when you come to kind of apply for graduation. And indeed, you will kind of sometimes, and it has happened in the past with students of ours who have gone and done their placement year, no guarantees, but there is a kind of a consistent historical record of students going on to do a placement year, and at the end of their placement year actually being offered a place of work at their at their placement year. So you can actually that will help you transition very smoothly from doing your degree into kind of line of employment after graduation.
I'm happy to say we've got Lauren back on the line. We're going to come to you in just a sec, Lauren, but Dr. Virtanen, you were talking about your international background there before coming to Kent. How welcoming did you find the university and Canterbury and Kent generally when you got here?
That's a really wonderful question. It's the kind of thing I don't actually talk about a great deal in my kind of professional life, but it's worthwhile bearing in relation to your question. That actually, I am a Kent student myself. I'm a Kent alumni. I first came to Canterbury and the University of Kent in 2004 as a student. I did my undergraduate degree here, and I loved it so much that I stayed on to do a master's degree. I loved my master's degree so much that I applied to do a PhD at Kent and got in and did my PhD here. And then at the end of my PhD, because my now colleagues clearly weren't sick of me, I ended up getting a job lecturing at Kent at the end of my PhD. So actually, I have a huge, long history, and I've known Kent both as a student and as a teacher. And then I have a huge deal of love for the department as a result of that. So when I first kind of arrived to Canterbury and to Kent, I obviously, because I lived abroad, I hadn't had a chance to actually visit at open days or anything like that myself. So the first time I arrived to Canterbury was, I think, during my welcome week. And I have a very vivid memory of that because we parked our car my parents had driven us from the Netherlands to kind of drop me off here because of, well, luckily the links, travel links enabled us to do so. And we parked our car nearby the kind of old sort of medieval towers by the West Gate in Canterbury city centre. And I stepped out of the car, and what I experienced from that very first moment was just a feeling of coming home. It felt very welcoming. I felt the atmosphere of the town just felt hugely kind of calming and exciting to me both at the same time. So I really I walked through that gate and to kind of put a too poetic a phrase on it, never looked back. I felt like I had a kind of arrived somewhere. And because Kent is quite an international university, we have a huge range of different nationalities that kind of are form our student body. I didn't feel out of place at all as having come here as a student who had moved here from abroad. I felt very kind of welcome to the community because it was an international kind of community, and and also there were lots of different societies for students from Europe, students from abroad, and so on. And that kind of helped me connect with people who were perhaps dealing with a similar kind of set of living in the UK for the first time, as well as being students on their own for the first time. So it was a really kind of hugely beneficial support network that I experienced at the time. So in short, found it hugely welcoming and hugely moving and inspiring as a kind of a place to arrive to.
So we've heard a bit about your journey there, Dr. Virtanen. Lauren, tell us a little bit about what drew you to Kent.
So hi everyone, finally. So like Rory, I've just come out of my second year. I study English literature and film, joint honours. I chose Kent because I was always interested in studying English. It was something that I loved. It was also something that was kind of a base for me to understand the world around me, to understand culture, politics, history, all sort of the main issues, and also just personally enriching for me. And then in college, I started doing film, and I saw that like film was very similar to English in that way, like what it gave to me. So I wanted to do a joint honours, and I found that Kent was 100% the best option for me to do both of these subjects. So I really like that sense of interdisciplinarity, and I found that studying both of those subjects, like one of them could feed into the other one, and likewise. And I think a really good example of this is that when I was studying what's now called changing literatures, I actually got to do film analysis in an English essay when I was sort of writing about adaptations of Pride and Prejudice. So I did the 2005 film. So that was a really big draw for me. And then on top of that, all these bonuses of having a really lovely campus, that was something that really drew me to it. When I went to visit Kent, I actually stayed overnight in a bed and breakfast. So I had a really good sense of like what the city was like. It was so lovely, like had that kind of historical cobblestoney feel about it, and really nice kind of greenery. So I was instantly drawn to that. I was drawn to all the kind of societies and social things that were offered to me. So I found that on the student life and the academic life, which are those kind of like two sides of student experience that are really important, Kent was just like 10 out of 10, exactly what I wanted.
And Dr. Virtanen talked in really glowing terms about that environment on campus. Lauren, for you, tell us a little bit about what that environment is actually like at the University of Kent.
Yeah, so in my first year, I got to live on campus. I was in Parkwood, and I just found instantly it was really a homely environment. I didn't get homesick at all because it just, like, my room was lovely. I got to meet my housemates and made friends through that. I could like wash my clothes in there's sort of like outlets around. There was a shop nearby. There was the Woody's bar, and I remember that every Sunday they have like a quiz on during term time. So me and my housemates would go and do that. So it was a really nice kind of social atmosphere that made me feel at home in my first week. There was also a study hub that was sort of like literally a stone's throw from my front door. So I could go there and get some work done. And it just really felt like I had everything I needed on campus. And then when I wanted to sort of explore the city, then I could do that. And like Rory was saying earlier, I just reiterate that like the city is such a good size. It's quite almost like cozy. It's not too small and it's not too big. Like everything is all within a good, reasonable distance of each other. But at the same time, there's always something else that you can discover. So I was finding, even in my second year, even when I was last in Canterbury, like a week ago now, I was still finding new things, new places. And in that sense, Canterbury just feels really special to me.
Of course, it feels very special to many other students as well, and hopefully also to some of those prospective students watching. And if any of you have any questions, do send them in on YouTube, and we'll get those answered by our panel. Before we move on to our final panel, just a couple more quick questions. Rory, let's come to you, because you were talking about being the editor for Inquire, the student paper. For those prospective students looking to come to university, what sort of range of societies are there on offer? How do they sign up, and what do they have to do if they maybe want to set up one themselves? Okay, I apologise. We've lost Rory. We'll try and get him back. I'll ask you that, Lauren, though, because you were talking about that really vibrant student environment on campus. So when it comes to societies, what were sort of the ones that you were a member of? And for prospective students, what do they need to do to join those societies? And maybe if they wanted to set up one themselves?
Sorry, there's a slight delay there.
Is Rory answering this?
Sorry, both. We've had a bit of a lag. Let's go to Rory first, and then Lauren, if you want to tell us about your experience. So Rory, we'll come back to you.
Okay, so if you look up University of Kent societies and just sort by all and scroll down that page, you'll see what looks like a dizzying amount of societies available. and it might seem overwhelming. But what you'll find in your first week is there'll be a Freshers' Fair, and there'll be people all over campus explaining what all the societies are for, and there'll be taster sessions for anything you can imagine. So we have a wide range of sports teams, but also societies for really anything you can imagine. There's a vibrant film society. We have societies for board games, but also if you're interested in short film production, there's KTV. As I said, I myself am the editor for the university newspaper. That's open to all students. You can write for us. But there's really societies for everyone. I mean, most academic subjects have societies. So there is a literature society, but there are societies for. I mean, there's a Quidditch society in terms of our sports. There are societies for interests, hobbies, and that they're always developing. So the Live Music Society is one that really found its feet this year, and going into future years will be quite vibrant in and around Canterbury city centre and on campus. So my advice for societies would just be try them out. You'll find that you probably can't attend all the ones that you try out, but you lose nothing by going along, making friends, and seeing what happens.
And Lauren, have you found, from your experience, you've been able to join those societies that have your interests, and maybe you've been able to find something that you didn't think you were interested in beforehand?
Yeah, so I have been kind of casually involved in Inquire, so I'm basically just a writer doing opinion articles for them, and I've really enjoyed doing that. I'm also part of the Film Society as well. And basically, I think it's just like there's really nothing you can lose from sort of like going along and trying something out and meeting people, especially in your kind of academic societies, because you're meeting people that you'll probably have seen around in your lectures and seminars. But obviously, your lectures and seminars aren't really that kind of social environment as such. So it's really good to sort of like go along to these events and meet these people in a slightly more informal context. And then, you know, you get people who might not necessarily be in your lectures or seminars, or you've never seen before on campus. And that's the real value of kind of joining these societies that are a little bit more niche as such. I recently joined the kind of, it's got a really long name, but you'll be able to find it on the society page. It's kind of like the sci-fi society. It's kind of like TV shows and films and things like that. They're all kind of like sci-fi genre types. And through that, it's kind of like you meet people across different years, across different subjects that you might not ordinarily meet. And I think that's a really good value in having those societies. It just makes you a bit more involved in not just an academic community, but a social community here at Kent.
And a real range, as you both pointed out. You know, you might not be able to go to Hogwarts, but you can still do Quidditch at the University of Kent. So that's a pretty good advert for the diverse range of societies. Rory and Lauren, thank you both for sticking around and answering those questions and dealing with obviously those technical issues. Dr. Virtanen, we're going to come to you for the final panel shortly. We'll also be rejoined by Dr. James and another student. So bear with us. We've got a couple of clips here and we'll be with you shortly.
The Literature Seminar is a place for you to lead your own learning. The seminar is not like an ordinary classroom. There's nothing delivered to you, there's no instruction. Rather, you go away and you do your own preparation based on your own reading and your own research, and you bring that into the seminar. And then when the readings are brought out for you and your classmates to compare, you come up with your own ideas and arguments. And the seminar leader's job is not to tell you what's right and wrong, not even really to guide you along one particular path, but just to help you and your classmates discover what's in each other's minds and what's lying in the text that you can dig out of it. Now, the traditional seminar is really rooted in the text and in textual interpretation, and you'll still get to do a lot of that at Kent if you come and study literature with us. But in the 21st century, the literature seminar is also changing. You might find yourself analysing social media data to see how literary texts proliferate in the world of today. You might find yourself writing a computer program to analyse the language of a novel or to generate some new poetry. You might find yourself collaborating on a wiki or leading a webinar with students from China or in other countries. There's a great deal of transformation happening in the economy and in society, and that digital transformation is happening in English as well. And you, as the next generation of students, will get to lead that transformation and make it happen, because really at the heart of the seminar is the student, and what the student does is what happens in the seminar, and it would be great to see you there.
As well as being a lecturer in contemporary literature, I'm also the School of English Employability Officer. This means that I'm responsible for helping students think about where they'd like to be after their degree. And I do this in a range of ways. Firstly, I hold office hours every week where students can book an appointment and come and talk to me about anything related to careers. That might just be, I don't know what I want to do next, or I've got a specific goal, but I just need some help in achieving it. Secondly, I run a range of workshops, everything from how to write a CV, how to apply for an internship, or how to get onto a graduate scheme. Thirdly, we run a range of events where we invite industry professionals to talk to students about how to make it into careers such as publishing, editing, marketing, social media. Finally, we have a range of work experience opportunities, including the School of English Ambassador Scheme. This allows students to go into secondary schools and support English-related projects, gaining work experience alongside their degree. All of these things are designed to help you and support you in thinking about where you'd like to be in the future and how to get there.
Dr. Virtanen and Dr. James are back with us to answer your questions. Do keep them coming in on YouTube. We'll get them answered in this final panel. And I'm also joined by Lucy. Lucy, do you want to tell us a little bit about your student experience at Kent?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Lucy. I'm just finishing my second year on the English literature course, so I'll be going into my third year in September. For me, Kent has been like such an incredible experience. Studying English has been so rewarding. I've had some experiences to like explore what I'm interested in, learn new things. I've definitely come out of it a more informed and critical thinker. For me in particular, I've really enjoyed sort of learning the different genres and different forms that I wasn't aware of before starting university. For example, I'm now planning on doing a dissertation on the Harlem Renaissance, which is a period in 1920s America where black writers started to express their cultural identity, which is something that I never even encountered before embarking on my degree at Kent. So, yeah, I just think it's definitely developed. I've definitely developed into a very well-informed thinker and reader, and I've really enjoyed having the opportunity to handle different texts that I've never yet encountered. And yeah, it's just been a really great experience, and I've loved the course.
That's really good to hear, and obviously we've heard from you and Rory and also Lauren, who've all spoken glowing terms about their time at Kent. And I think one of the areas from an outsider that seems to have enhanced it is the real array of activities that are on offer within the School of English. Dr. James, we've seen that there's been many guest lecturers that have happened, some really notable names like historian David Olusoga, who's come to speak at the University of Kent. Tell us a little bit about those activities within the School of English and what students can look forward to.
Okay, yeah, I mean, there are lots of things going on that the school itself organises for both staff and students. And you talked about, you mentioned David Olusoga's lecture there. That's part of a big, very high profile public lecture series that we have started running. So about 4 times a year, we have a really, really high profile name to come in and speak about something that that really does invite students and members of staff to think beyond the books. And this refers to something that I mentioned much earlier on in this event in the first segment, the way that books are the start but not the finish. So David Olusoga came to speak about the Windrush scandal and the ways in which government had colluded to try and prevent Commonwealth citizens who had a perfect right to come to the UK coming here, even though they'd been invited. And that kind of event, as I say, those big public lectures around 4 times a year, and all students are welcome to come. There's question and answers afterwards. Afterwards, there's a reception, so students can actually come and chat with the speakers. And I think that's a really, really important thing to do. But beyond that, we have a number of rather smaller events centered around some of our particular research activities. So we have, for example, a research centre that's attached to the School of English that looks at my area of particular interest, medieval and early modern studies, and that has a speaker every week that students can come to. And while, of course, for these more specialist things, very often it's postgraduate students who want to come to that, we are always welcoming to undergraduates who want to come along to get a sense of the greater depth of the field. So there's all that kind of thing. But one of the other things that I think is really, really important is the activities that students themselves put together. That's a really, really important thing. So they can set up their own societies, they can set up reading groups. And as a school, we will facilitate that. We will provide them with a little bit of administrative help. We may be able to provide them with a little bit of budget to help them with refreshments and things like that. But students themselves can set up their own activities. So if they have a particular area of interest, they can organise something and we will help it to happen.
That was interesting that you mentioned looking beyond the books. I was just interested to know for students, what about the facilities that are on offer for School of English students? We know there's obviously a very big library at the University of Kent, but what other facilities are there at the disposal of students?
Well, the library is important to mention because, of course, all English students are keen readers. They're passionate readers, and we do actually believe that the library belongs to us more than to any other subject in the university. And there was actually an enormous extension of the library 5 or 6 years ago, which increased it in size by over 50%. So it has a huge collection of books, hard copy books, and also electronic resources. But within the School of English, we have a dedicated undergraduate common room. So students have got study space there. There are computers that they can access. It's quite a nice hub for some of these student-generated activities I've talked about. So if students want to get together, perhaps have an informal study group or a reading group, they can do that within the common room. Students across the university also are able to have access to things like public computing and printing and so on. So although most students nowadays do tend to arrive with their own laptops, there is always computing equipment available for them. On top of that, the university has a whole host of wider facilities. There is a cinema on site, there are theatre and drama studio facilities, plus the huge range of sporting facilities that you would expect of a top-class university. So there's a whole array of structure in place to help students to pursue all the interests that they want to while they're here at Kent.
And Dr. Virtanen, so students can enjoy in all those activities and use those amazing facilities that Dr. James talked about. Let's kind of go back to the admissions process for prospective students. What would you and what would your colleagues be looking for from prospective students on their personal statements?
That's a really, really excellent question, and I have to say that in terms of my kind of line of work of being the school's admissions officer as well as this kind of director of admissions, the thing I always spend the most amount of time whenever I'm processing and reading through applications. And the thing from which I derive the greatest pleasure as a part of that application review is reading the personal statement. Now, obviously, there are a number of different kinds of things that you need to cover in your personal statement. You want to kind of show your sort of how your previous educational experience might feed into what you want to be studying, and that's irrespective of what degree you want to do. You will always want to do that. But for me personally, what I love about reading those personal statements, and what I would encourage everyone who is applying, whether it is to Kent or elsewhere, to do in their personal statements, is to make sure that that personal statement is indeed that it is personal. I really love the kind of moment where I have to, when I read a personal statement and I get a clear sense of the students or the applicant's personality, what their interests are, what their passions are, what kind of literature excites them, what they think about their role in the world and anything like that. How are they thinking about the world? Because obviously literature, as much as it is a solitary activity in the sense that it is about you reading a book and then perhaps talking about it, we at the School of English firmly hold that literature is, as we have said before, a communal activity. It's not something that happens in a vacuum or isolation. It's something that happens in the world, and it's also something that happens between people. So obviously, because we think about that and we think of ourselves as a community, I love getting the sense of students as people, what they are like as a person, what their interests, enthusiasms, and what drives them. So I think that's the kind of key advice that I would give to anyone working on their personal statements, is to ensure that that personal statement gives to whoever is reading it a clear sense of not just your experience and your educational merits, but also your sense of you as a person. And that's always the kind of personal statement that personally to me is really exciting to see.
Some strong words of wisdom there. Lucy, tell us a little bit about, we heard how you've enjoyed your time at Kent and a little bit about your experience. Tell us a little bit about from the accommodation side. Were you living on campus in first year, and what was that environment like, living on campus, if you did?
I can't hear. The environment on campus. Oh, sorry. The environment on campus is definitely like a massive community. I'd say one of the best things about studying at Kent is that we have this thing called varsity every year, which is, if you're interested in sports, is like such an amazing event where we actually compete against all of our societies, or at least most of them, against Christchurch University. And even if you're not into sports like me, like I'm not into sports at all, like the environment on the campus is so supportive, and it's like this massive like sense of community. Everyone goes to games, there's people walking around in their sports gears all the time. It just feels like, because everything's on one campus, it makes you feel like a massive family. It's so easy to recognise Kent students in and off campus. Also, I'd say like the campus is so welcoming and friendly. Being from London myself, I loved Kent because it's so green and everything's all in one campus, even though it's massive. It's such a different experience for me. When you walk around, it's so easy to just kind of get lost in like the views. You can see Canterbury from the centre of the campus. You can see like all of the city, which is so beautiful. And there are loads of like greenery walks. Even the accommodations are kind of set amongst like lovely forests and just greeneries and hills. So yeah, I'd say that like the vibe on campus is just so lovely and welcoming. Especially when you live on campus, because everything's so close. You're never more than like a 10-minute walk away from your lectures or seminars. So it just feels so like sheltered and protected. But obviously there's the option to go to town, so you don't feel too enclosed. But yeah, it definitely makes you feel safe and like part of the family and part of the community.
Dr. James, I'm really sorry. I heard that you were you tried to have a few comments after Dr. Virtanen's section just now. I'm just handing it back over to you. What you wanted to add?
Thanks very much. It was only just a little addition to what Juha had to say there, because I think one thing that often worries applicants when they're putting together their personal statement is a feeling that they're not going to be good enough, that they don't know enough. And it's really important for you to understand that you don't have to know everything before you arrive. In fact, if you think you know everything before you arrive, you probably won't have much fun while you're here. Way back in the first segment, Professor Batchelor talked about the importance of curiosity. And I think one of the things that we are looking for from our students is that they are curious about the world, they're curious about literature, they want to know new things, they want to find things out. And so I would just add to what Juha has said about the personal statement that, if there are things that you don't know about, but you're interested in finding out about, see if you can find a few words, half a sentence in your statement to point out that as well, to show us the things that you're excited to learn about. That's all I wanted to say.
Well, I think that is a perfect place to end. Dr. James, Dr. Virtanen and Lucy, thank you all very much for joining this afternoon. And of course, thank you to Professor Batchelor and Rory and Lauren for also joining us for this virtual open day. And thanks to you at home for watching and sending in your questions. Hopefully we've been able to answer some of them. As Dr. James said, if you're curious to come to Kent and to find out more, you can find out more by going to www.kent.ac.uk/English, or follow the school on social media at Uni Kent English. Before we go, here's a little teaser of a lecture, one of many that you can expect to enjoy here at Kent. But that's all from me. Thanks for joining for the School of English Virtual Open Day, and hope to see you here in one of the new academic years. Goodbye.
The title of this lecture is Walking with Refugee Tales. So, 1. Setting. As the subtitle of the project had it, Refugee Tales was a walk in solidarity with refugees, asylum seekers and detainees from Dover to Crawley via Canterbury. The route was the North Downs Way, which largely coincides with the Pilgrim's Way, being the ancient track along which people once travelled from Hampshire and points in between to Canterbury. Organised by Gatwick Detainees Welfare Group in collaboration with Kent Refugee Help, the walk took 9 days, punctuated at every stop by the public telling of 2 tales. 1, the tale of an asylum seeker, former immigration detainee or refugee. The other of a person, for instance a lawyer or interpreter, who works with people seeking asylum in the UK. Each tale was a collaboration between an established writer and the person whose tale was being told. And the overarching purpose of the project was to call for an immediate end to indefinite immigration detention in the UK. Drawing structurally on the Canterbury Tales, the project thus had 3 fundamental elements: a culturally charged sense of space, the visible fact of human movement, and an exchange of information through the act of telling stories. It is interesting also to note the dates of the project, 13th to 21st of June 2015. Dates matter. When Refugee Tales took place, it was ahead of the historical curve, only just as it turned out, but ahead nonetheless. For those who witnessed it, the sight of, at any one point, between 80 and 150 people, a good number of whom were asylum seekers and ex-detainees crossing the landscapes of southern England, was a powerful spectacle. The point of the spectacle, it came to be understood as a spectacle of welcome, was that people who are hidden by and from the culture, rendered invisible by the procedures of the state, were here taking and asserting their places in the landscape. The project was blessed by the weather. It only rained once, and so there were days when it was possible to see the whole party strung out across the countryside, walkers in solidarity, stretched a mile or more into the distance. It is this aspect of the project, its sheer conspicuousness, that has most been altered by subsequent events, although it is important to register a shift in chronology. At the moment of the project, reporting on the so-called migrant crisis was concentrated on Calais. The repeated images on which organisers were invited to comment were of people running alongside vehicles or climbing into lorries, and the tone of the reporting was one of hostility. That was June 2015. By mid-August, the images had decisively altered. The sights of tens of thousands of refugees or people seeking asylum walking through Hungary towards Germany and other parts of Northern Europe became the trigger for a notably different tone, and, temporarily at least, the makings of a different discourse. As the project relates to this historical event, the consequence is that it can't ever look the same. When Refugee Tales walks again, as it will in July this year, and insofar as it achieves a visual impact, it will be walking after the historical fact.